Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Listen with Vobes. I'm Richard Vobes, and this is the show in which I read old books to you, hopefully in a audible way. Today we are continuing with our look at Neighbourhood by Tickner Edwards. Fascinating book written in around about 1910, published in 1911. This version, I think, is actually one of those early ones, to be honest with you, that was in a lending library. I'll tell you which one it was in. The London Borough of Barnet. But it was what is it? They removed it. When you remove a book from the library, redrawn, I think they call it. Anyway, we want Tick the Vic. We want Tick the Vic, says Dave Evad. Have no fear, Tick the Vic is coming. Good afternoon to TurboStream, to the lovely Julia, to Holly and Co, to Alison O'Brien. Good afternoon to you. Not seen you here before. If you have been, then it's my remiss for not noticing, but thank you for coming along. Billabong O'Neill, Justine Jones. Alison says, lovely here in sunny East Grinstead, but chilly. It is sunny down in Worthing, and it's now on the turn. I think the temperature is going to drop. But we have a few days of sunshine in Sussex, certainly down here on the coast, according to the Met Office, unless, of course, they change their mind. Philip Hammond and Mary, good afternoon to you. Davey Vad, hello to you. Justine Jones, I may have already said. And Jen Coley, hello to you. Hooray for sunshine, she says. John F., good to see you. Ben Reeve, lovely to have you with us. He says, mad dash this morning to grab some accommodation after Goodwood members' meeting was pushed back to the 16th of October. Oh, I hope you managed to find something. TurboStream says, I made a few of my Manor House cakes. They were scrummy. I had to give up making it. I looked at your recipe yesterday after the show, which you'd emailed me. Thank you for that. And the video. Tremendous stuff. I need to sort that out and get the ingredients and go to... what is it today? Is it... it's Friday, isn't it? I don't have time this evening. So maybe over the weekend. Dave says that he wants the Tick the Vic. And H is there. Good afternoon to you. And Lee Lawson. Hello, everyone. Lovely afternoon in the garden. Tackling the is it corned? I can't read from over here. Three-corned leek, which has seeded itself freely amongst the tiny, wild cyclamen. Cyclamen, is it? What a fiddly job. Glad to have a story now. Yeah. And in the States, library books are withdrawn. Yes, that's what it would have been. Withdrawn from the shelves, I suppose. And Sensible so Paul says, just made it before Richard starts. Yes, that's why I always do a little bit of preamble at the beginning, in case people think, why don't you just get straight into reading it, you idiot? And the reason is people are, suddenly going, oh, crikey, or they've heard the ping and they're going to make a cup of tea and they go and do the ablutions. And no doubt, of course, everyone's combed their hair, smartened their appearance and got themselves looking respectable before we start the show, as indeed only could do. Turbo Stein says, not heard of corned leek. Three-cornered leek. Corned leek. I was going to say, is that like corned beef? Ben Reeve says, I did manage to get my accommodation. A caravan. Oh, blimey. The caravan was £92 for 3 nights, so cheaper than the £160 I paid for the original dates in May. £92 for a caravan. Is that your own caravan or the hire of a different caravan? Because it sounds a bit expensive going into a caravan site for 3 days for 92 quid. I assume that is a nice, all singing and dancing caravan with everything you could possibly Welsh. Corned leek is made from Welsh beef, says Dave Aved. Does he? I mean, it is. Is it? It is. I've just made some... I was waiting for the kettle to boil, which is why I was almost late myself. I got the old Essie going early. I saw some lovely beech wood that had been... There's a lot of trees. I've just finished editing tomorrow's video, which is sumptuous, by the way, just to let you know. Tomorrow's video, sumptuous. I was out in the sunshine, just finished editing it, quite proud of it. Sorry, noises off as the Essie is burning something that was cracking. And it suddenly went through my mind, I have closed it, haven't I? I don't want anything dropping out of the front of the Essie, but I have closed it. I'll smell the smoke. Probably can't tell the smoke now. I wouldn't be able to know the smoke because this house is always full of smoke. Anyway, that said, we are off in wild march on chapter 3, continuing with this remarkable book. Audrey Forbes says, if I type the St. George flag emoji, it is automatically deleted. Oh, is it? I wonder why that is. I didn't even know you could type the... I would have no idea how on my keyboard you would type the St. George emoji. Dave says, I had one at Church Farm, Pagham. Goodwood Festival of Speed, dates July, were up to £685 one year. Didn't book it that time. Gosh. I do know, I've never been to any of the Goodwood events. I've been to Goodwood, as in walk round it and stuff, but never been to any events that have been there. I guess, sorry, I should start, I know, but I used to do loads of events, either as comedy characters or as an entertainer, juggling, unicycling, fire eating, lying on bed of nails, eating fire, riding on a giraffe unicycle, slack rope walking, miming and robotics, to name a few. And it put me off because you'd always go in for free because they were employing you. So you went in and you did your stuff to the crowd, and then you could wander around, look at the exhibits and stuff. So now, anytime I go somewhere and you've got to pay to go in, it doesn't interest me at all. I know it's bizarre, isn't it? But it's sort of ruined it for me. Because I can imagine Festival of Speed, I've seen things, you know, nice old cars, people dressed up in sort of 20s and 30s gear, probably a good laugh, I imagine. But I've done similar things, dressed up in 30s gear and various things as a performer, walking around doing silly things. And now there's that sort of, did it for so long, for about 15 or 20 years, that I sort of felt, well, you have to pay me to go to these events, which is, I know that's all wrong. I'm just going to look at my fire and then we will start. You don't want me reading Tickner Edwards with flames bursting all around me. They live stream Goodwood Festival of Speed on YouTube. Oh, live stream it. Oh, do they? Well, there we are, you see. Who needs to go? It's Alum Family. It's Alum Family. So, right, anyway, let's get on with it. Otherwise, I could just sit here and waffle for years. I'm far too simple-minded. Right. If you remember, he was chatting away to the vicar, I think. That's delicious. After that day, I was housebound for near upon a week. Later than its wont by a good hour, the dawn broke every day. But as in darkness, so with the grey wan light... Oh, it's that word wan again. How did we say that we say wan? W-A-N? Is it one? One light. But as in darkness, so with the grey wan light, the wind never abated one iota of its whistling fury. The soft thud-thud of the flying snow reverberated on the panes. The white drifts at the street corners mounted steadily higher and higher. In the fireplace, where I already thought soon to start my summer fernery, I had the logs crackling and glowing with more than their old wintry might. Oh, I see what he's saying here. Summer fernery. That's a nice way of saying he put some ferns and things in the fireplace during the summer. Oh, I like that. I'd already thought soon to start my summer fernery, but I had the logs crackling and glowing with more than their old wintry might. Poor almond blossom, I thought to myself again and again as I sat in industriously stretching away in the strange dumbness and the thin, queer light that filled the room in snowy weather. Yet this was not so ill a wind but that some good was blown my way. I found myself overhauling arrears of work at a surprising rate. When the wind fell at last, backing steadily to west, then to southwest, and there came a night of drenching rain, rain that felt like hot tea to a hand held out in it, I was ready for any sort of idleness and any wandering company. 2 long days and nights the world lay under that simmering, steaming cataract. And then, such a morning, almost the last morning of the month, rose over Windlecombe, as made the mere awakening in one's bed seem like a sort of first act in a miracle play. The sun had hardly breasted Windle Hill before I was out and clear of the village. Its last red tinge had faded into night when I turned my tired steps homeward and so to bed once more. Lying there cosily with the delicious ache of 30 miles in my bones, blimey, and my ears, 30 miles? He's been in the house for 2 weeks or whatever it was, and he's got, I must go for a walk. 30 miles. There's me dragging my camera around for about 2-3 miles. 30 miles. Who goes on a walk for 30 sodding miles? Bloody show off. Lying there cosily with, what a swine, with the delicious ache. He could write anything though, couldn't he, really? He may have only just popped round the corner. Lying there cosily with the delicious ache of 30 miles in my bones. I bet he doesn't have one of those things that measures your steps and says, I've got to do 10,000 steps before the end of the year. 30 miles in my bones, and my ears... I'm going to start that line one more time, and I will promise I will get through it. Lying there cosily with the delicious ache of 30 miles in my bones, and in my ears the lilt of 1,000 melodies, all the glad day's journeying projected itself like swiftly changing pictures thrown upon the screen of the starry night. The downs first, the green sea of hills that seemed to heave and subside as the violet cloud shadows lazily drove from crest to crest. The unending sheep bell music and lark song and the playing of the gulls high up in the blue, like scraps of white paper fluttering in the breeze. Then down the steep hillside to the sunny flats, where the plovers were at their love play, each pair rising and falling, somersaulting together, crying continually, coming to a rest a moment, and then up again at the old interminable gambols. Here in the deep ditches, the frogs croaked. There was a golden rim of marsh marigold to every strip of water, over which you must peer if you would study the submerged life below. And what a life there was down in each crystal deep. Queer water beetles wove a bright pattern on the surface of the slow-moving, almost stagnant stream, and their shadows made just the same pattern on the sunlit weed of the bottom, though here it was black instead of bright. Down there were the mimic forests, or jungles of ferny, bronze-green growth, all in gentle undulating motion as the water glided imperceptibly by. Shoals of minnows cruised about in the sunny open, or lay in wait singly in the shadowy glades. These single fish seemed to be forever quarrelling, either making sudden raid on the lairs of their neighbours or being attacked in their turn. When they banded themselves together, evidently making common peace the better to rout a common enemy, and swam boldly in the sunshine, I could see that each fish was faintly tinged with blue and green and orange-red, the identical colours, although vague and subdued, of the kingfisher, their traditional foe. Then came up the vision of a long white road, barred with tree shadows, flowing between thorn hedges already full of green promise of leafage and edged with butterfly-haunted flowers. Little cottages passed by, ankle-deep in blue forget-me-nots, and a flare of blossoming creepers. Deep pine woods took the road and unfolded it in fragrant gloom. Deep pine woods took the road and folded it in fragrant gloom. Then it set forth in the sunshine again to wander over... Oh, not the forest didn't set forth, of course. Deep pine woods took the road and folded it in fragrant gloom. Then set it forth in the sunshine again to wander over coarse-clad heaths, or amid spangled meadows. I saw the inn, where I sat a while in the company of travelling rinders. I just makes you wonder how long it took him to write this stuff, because every word has been very carefully plucked out of a dictionary. I saw the inn, where I sat a while in the company of travelling rinders, men who stripped the bark from the felled oaks for the tanneries, who would now be camping like Robin and his merry rascals a month long in the woods. Here is a picture of the rinders that has been provided in the book. I don't know how much of that you can see. No, I realise you can't see any of it, but wait. Excuse me coughing, I've had a bit of COVID recent. Why won't that open up? There they are. Stripping the bark of a downed tree for tannery purposes. Interesting. Let me just pause for a second. Another of our freedoms taken away. What's that? Maybe it's because the flag has been hijacked by certain undesirables. Oh. I don't know why you can't do a flag. It might have been in... I can't... No, we didn't do it in this one. I don't know why. Anyway. Yes, the rinders, who are the men who stripped the bark from the felled oaks for the tanneries, who would now be camping like Robin and his merry rascals a month long in the woods. I dozed off and woke again, where, in the drowsy afternoon sunshine, I had rested under a great pollard ash, weighed down with ivy. Upon the grass about my feet there shone an infinity of small, rounded objects, such as if Aladdin had passed by and thrown down a handful of superfluous rubies. Everywhere their small carmine lustre gemmed the sward. Year by year I have found I'm not reading very well today, I do apologise. Some days I read pretty good, other days, I read crap. Today is a crap reading day, and I really apologise for that. I think there's something in the rhythms of life, isn't there, that some you kind of have... I had a good filming day, and it edited well, and I think it'll be a nice video for tomorrow. And because that's good, now this thing has got to be bad. That's how I think life goes. And then the Vobes show tonight will probably be okay, nothing special, just be okay because I'll be back on the rise. And I'll probably have a really good night's sleep because that will be the peak of the good wave. And then in the morning, tomorrow will be really crap. First thing, I'll probably oversleep. May not even wake up. That is the same as oversleeping. Oh, yeah. Anyway, I will try and read a bit better. Everywhere their soft carmine lustre gemmed the sward. Year by year I have found the like on meadow paths, wood rides, by the church tower, sometimes in the very streets of the village, and have never known how they came into being. You may have broken asunder the ivy berries 100 times, and noted the pale hue seeds within, yet never guessed that here was the mining ground for your treasure. It is the sun and air that make rubies of the fallen ivy seeds. And for a last vision, as I lay watching the starshine travelling across the square of the window, I saw within it a picture, and heard again a note of music, perhaps the most wonderful thing in the whole day's idle round. It was a keeper's cottage at the entrance to a wood. On the steep thatch, white pigeons hobbled amorously, and behind, in a green bower of elder, a wild bird sang. I could see the bird. I knew it to be a common song thrush, but the song was the song of a nightingale, not the loud silver-toned warble that the poets love, but the slow, low, sorrowful keening that always seems as if torn from the very heart of the bird. And here is a pretty problem. If the nightingale were already with us, singing in every break, there would be nothing strange in the thrush, prone as he is of imitation, borrowing a stanza from the new melody here and there. But it is more than strange that he should do so at the present time, seeing that for 8 or 9 months back there has been no nightingale music in the land. Yet we, who are mute fowl, are all thinking of April now, and what it has in store for us. Can the thrush be thinking of April too? And as with us, can old memories of nightingales be stirring in him that alone can sing his thoughts aloud? Yes, there you go. I'm glad we got through that bit. Anne says that I'm doing fine, thank you. I could eat a crunchy. A crunchy? Where did that come from? Lee Lawson, one of the Petworth immigrants, just arrived in wild Canada. Just arrived? That's taken them a long time, hasn't it? What do you mean he's just arrived? One of the Petworth immigrants just arrived in the wild Canada in the 1830s, wrote that he had to buy his dead wife in the rind of a tree. He had to... Oh, Berry, sorry. It's when I've been reading close and then read afar, sometimes because it's on a screen and it's light, the images fuse together. So that's why sometimes I misread. That's my excuse for misreading lines out there. This is different reading them here. They jump about. But here they just blur. Anyway, had to bury his dead wife in the rind of a tree because he couldn't get a coffin. Gosh. And when you say the rind of a tree, do you mean that like when you peel an apple? Do you mean like when you've got an apple and you peel it and the rind can curl off into one long coil, that effectively that's what you're doing, but binding the woman, the dead woman, in this rind of a tree? Gosh. The bark, presumably. The rind of a tree. What is the rind of it? Is that the bark? Yeah, Richard has a very interesting voice, so easy to listen to, says Lee Lawson. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Ouch. Sensible Paul says, thank Crunchy, it's Friday. We are now on April. What's interesting is this book is going far too fast, but also I was just thinking, because I went out on a walk this morning, as I mentioned earlier, and I was aware of the things that he'd been talking about because we'd been reading them for February, March, and I was thinking, golly, can I see any of these things? Well, I didn't see any of the things that he was talking about. Buried around the corner. Yeah, thank you, Dave. Around the corner. Yes. I've been down in the dumps recently. Well, mainly because my dad died. I couldn't afford a proper funeral. Sorry, that's a Berkesway joke. 1978, down in the dumps, because my dad died. You couldn't. Never mind. April. Sunday morning in Windlecombe, especially when the season is early. April and I'm sorry. Sunday morning in Windlecombe, especially when the season is early. Especially when the season is early April and the weather is fine, is of all the mornings. Why am I struggling today? Why? Come on, why? Sunday morning in Windlecombe, especially when the season is early April and the weather fine, is, of all the mornings, the one not to spend indoors. Yes! Thank you. Today, until the church bell had ceased its quiet tolling and the last belated worshipper had hurried up the street, I stood just within the screen of the box hedge that divides my garden from the public way, so as not to obtrude my old coat and pipe and weekday boots on those more ecclesiastically minded. And then, bareheaded, hands thrust deep into trouser pockets even, and pipe, leaving a grey trail of smoke behind on the tranquil air, I lounged out upon the green, deserted and still in the sweet April sunshine, to study Windlecombe under one of its most inviting aspects, its seventh-day spirit of earned sloth and unstrung loitering ease. Yeah, that was a hard paragraph to comprehend. Though the old vicar has held his post here for nearly half a century and is better acquainted with the parish than almost any other, there is just this one aspect of life in Windlecombe which must be to him forever a sealed book. When once he has got his little flock together for morning service, with the church door shut upon them, the village and all its doings past, for the time being. What is the time? I don't want to abandon it because I'm being rubbish, but I am being so rubbish. For some reason, I just cannot get the sentences to work in my brain. When once he has got his little flock together for morning service, with the church door shut upon them, the village and all its doings past, for the time being, out of his ken. On wet Sundays and on the great church feasts, he knows that many accustomed corners, my own included, will be as infallibly occupied as they are at other times, unvaryingly empty, and therefore he never makes either complaint or question. He goes on his way, never doubting but there is some saving good somewhere in the worst of us, never doubting but there is some saving good somewhere in the worst of us, and wholly-heartedly loving us all, while we, the black sheep, who would sacrifice for him our right hands, our money, our very lives even, anything but our fine Sunday mornings, go our ways too, satisfied, if there is meaning in looks, of his secret sympathy. For there never was a human man, whether lay or clerical, who, of a fine Sunday morning, believed himself so nearly at one with his Maker on his knees in a dusty pew as abroad in the vast green church of the English countryside. I had gone no more than a dozen paces over the level worn green of the... Oh, crikey. I had gone no more than a dozen paces over the level, worn grass of the green when I stopped to look about me, knowing well what I would see. Like rabbits coming out of their burrows after the gunner has passed on, the non-churching folk began to appear. I saw young Daniel Dray and young Tom Clemmer go off with a bag full of ferrets and their faithful terriers at their heels. Dewey Artlett arrived at the Wellhead, the traditional meeting place for Windlecombe lovers, and stood waiting there with a big nosegay of primroses in his hand and another in his cap. He was joined a moment later by one of the girls from the farm, and off they went together for a morning sweethearting in the lanes. At the far end of the green, the inn door came clattering open, and that genial reprobate, the innkeeper, appeared in his shirt sleeves, blinking up at the sky as though but lately out of his bed. Other doors here and there were thrust back, each giving egress to some happy loiterer in his Sunday best. Within 5 minutes, almost every garden gate had a pair of brown arms comfortably resting on it, and voices began to pass the time of day to and fro in the whole sunny length of the street. But easy stages, stopping for a word here and there by an open door or a chat with some old acquaintances sunning himself amidst his cabbages, I got to the foot of the hill and so to the river. The ferryman sat in his boat, but as he returned me for my The ferryman sat in his boat, but as he returned me for my greeting, only a stare and a scarce perceptible shake of the head, I knew that our common enemy was in ambush close by. I made off along the river path and turned into the woods. Oh my God, I am just... There was a blackbird singing somewhere in the budding thicket, and I managed to get quite close to his perch without being seen. To the songs of birds like the thrush, the skylark, the robin, you must listen for 5 minutes, and beautiful as they are in that short space of time, you will have learnt all that the song has to tell. But the blackbird's song is very different. It has an endless succession of changes in rhythm, power and quality. You may listen to it for an hour and never hear a phrase repeated in its exact form. The difference between the blackbird's song and that of nearly all the other birds is the difference between the singing of a happy schoolgirl and that of a prima donna. While both have melody, one alone has finished artistry. Until you have stayed in a wood with a blackbird a whole sunny April morning through and got from him the truth of things as he alone can tell it, you do not really know that spring is here. Now, by the riverside copse, as I leaned on the old lichen-gilded timbers of the fence, listening to the pure, unhurried notes, the fact that it was really April at last was suddenly borne upon me. In the daybreak and eventide choruses of the birds, the thrushes, by dint of sheer numbers and vehemence, easily overpower all other singers. Now and again you catch and isolate a matchless phase of blackbird music, but to hear the song in perfection, you must wait until the day is wearing on towards noon, and he seeks solitude for his singing. If birdsong is a language, then the blackbird must be the supreme orator of the woods. Though you understand not a syllable of what he is putting forth, there is no doubt of its ever-varying meaning. In the midst of a succession of quite simple phrases, each consisting of 3 or 4 notes at most, he suddenly gives you a passage whose melodious complexity is almost bewildering. He constantly varies the pace of his delivery. He embellishes his song with grace notes, beautiful silver chiming triplets in the midst of his lowest, most leisurely strains. The emphasis, attack, a sort of blustering use of sheer power of utterance. I'll read that again. There is emphasis, attack, a sort of blustering use of sheer power of utterance. Or he may run over a slow, quiet tune at his lightest tongue tip. At times, indeed, it is well nigh impossible to believe that you are not listening to 2 birds together, of totally different qualities of voice, alternating their melodies. How long I should have tarried there, furtively renewing this old acquaintance, I do not know. But it seems my cover was incomplete, and the song came to its usual termination. It stopped short in the midst of one of its brightest stanzas, and I knew my presence had been observed. The blackbird made off. There was first the defiant yet fearsome cluck, 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 until he was clear of the bushes and free to fly, and then away he went through the sunshine to the far bank of the river, hurtling over his shoulder as he went the usual mocking laughter peal. A week of April has gone by, a week of rain and shine, and the singing of the south wind by day, and at nights an intense dark calm full of the sound of purling brooks. The river runs high. All the streams are swollen. The low-lying meadows are half-green grass. Overspread with a pink mist of ladies' smock, and half-glittering pools of water that bring down the blue of the sky under your feet as you go. You can never forget the rain for an instant. On this page, as I sit writing at an open window, the morning sun was streaming a minute ago. Now a ragged grey rain cloud has come tumbling over the hills, and I cannot see across the green for the torrent. It is by almost as quickly as I set down these words, and now sunbeams are pouring through the window again. The whole village lies before me, drenched and sparkling, the street one long river of blinding light. Tom Artlett, going by this morning to his work and spying me in the garden, called out that he had heard the cuckoo twice already. And it may well be so. The ringing note of the wryneck, the cuckoo's mate, has been sounding in the elm tops all morning through, and the cuckoo is seldom far behind her messenger. Nightingale and swift, swallow and martin, they are all on their way northward now, and any day may bring them. But time spent at this season in looking forward to things that will be is always time wasted. But time spent at this season in looking... Oh, I've just read that line, sorry. I looked up and looked back down and picked up the wrong line. Every hour in early April has its own new revelation, and common eyes and ears do no more than mark the things that are. Yesterday, in the blink of sunny calm between the showers, I took my midday walk through the hazelwoods. The young leaves already tempered the sunlight to the primroses and anemones that covered the woodland floor, giving all a greenish tinge. Though the whole wood was full of primroses, it was only by the edges of the fields where they grew in full sunshine that their rich... Oh, I see. Sorry, I'm reading it because I'm trying to one of my problems is, I'm just going to stop for a second. One of the problems when I'm reading, and people may have different ways of doing this, is you're trying to get the meaning of, not only are you trying to read the words and all the little phrases that make up a sentence and the sort of, whatever they are, the sub parts of the sentence, is you're trying to get the rhythm as well as, and you're trying to get the meaning before you get to the end of the sentence, so you know how to phrase it. And doing this on the fly, when an author like Tickner Edwards does not waste a word, doesn't put in, he's not like James Hissy Fissy, whatever his name was, who can string a sentence with 1 million words in it. There is no word wasted in a sentence. And also, because it's 100 years ago, the fact that there is no word wasted in a sentence, that where sometimes I think there might be, in more modern way of writing, an of or an at or something else in the word, but the way he's phrased it is so beautifully clever and bereft of unnecessary words. I'm struggling sometimes to get, before I get to the end of the sentence, to know how it finishes, if you see what I mean, because you're trying to second guess all the time. Because if you just read the words, there is no emotion in it. I don't know if that makes any sense. But when I'm struggling, it's no good for everybody, because it just reads horribly. Well, yesterday, it seemed to just flow really well. And it's not him, it's me. It's just some days I just can't get onto it. And I know you say I worry too much, but I want to enjoy it too. How are we doing? Let's see where we're going to end. We've got it. Goes on a bit, this bit, but we'll crack on. I enjoy reading it out to you, but I'm just struggling a bit today. Yesterday, in a blink of calm, see, I've done it again. Sometimes I'm looking at the words and I look ahead and I've seen a word, and then I've forgotten the word I've seen because I'm looking at the next word, and I read that word and I've not said the word that I've just seen, if you see what I mean. It's probably me. I'm just... It's very depressing when I can't do it. Just as a musical instrument player, whatever that is in English, a musical instrument, a musician, a musical instrument player. Just as a musician probably gets frustrated on days when they're struggling with their instrument and they just can't play it well. That's how it is with me. Yesterday, see, if I just read the words, this is how it would go. Yes, I'm just reading the word as I see it. Yesterday, in a blink of sunny calm between the showers, I took my midday walk through the hazel woods. The young leaves already tempered the sunlight to the primroses and anemones that covered the wood. That's just grim. Yesterday, in a blink of sunny calm between the showers, I took my midday walk through the hazel woods. The young leaves already tempered the sunlight to the primroses, which I don't really know what that means, but I think that's the phraseology. The young leaves already tempered the sunlight. Does it mean the young leaves have already reduced the sunlight? Is that what he's saying? Because that's the thing. If I can't understand what he's saying, I can't convey it. Sorry, I'm. This is really awkward for you to watch, isn't it? It is like a man just heaving through mud. The young leaves already tempered the sunlight to the primroses and anemones that covered the woodland floor, giving all a greenish tinge. Though the whole wood was full of primroses, it was only by the edge of the fields where they grew in full sunshine that their rich yellow colour had any significance. Under the hazels this was so diluted and explained away by the white of the anemones, and again by the leaf-filtered sunbeams from above, that the primroses no longer seemed yellow. At a few yards distant, in the dimmest spots, you could scarce tell one flower from another but for its shape. Whenever I went in the wood, the soft droning song of the bees went with me. You could hardly put one foot upon the other without dashing the cup from the lip of one of these winged wanderers. But though the anemones and primroses grew so thick, so inextricably mingled together, the honeybees kept to the one species of flower. They clambered in and out of the star-like anemones, sometimes 2 and 3 at a blossom together. But the primroses were always passed over by hive bee and bumblebee alike. Here and there I picked one of the sulphur blossoms and, tearing it apart, made sure that there was nectar in plenty. Its presence was plain, even to the human eye. The truth was, of course, that the sweets of the primrose are placed so far down the trumpet tube of the flower that no bee had tongue long enough to gather them, even if they had a mind to. Or even if they were to her mind, as he's actually written it. Yet the bees might scorn the primroses for much the same reason as the fox contemned the grapes in the fable. There was one creature... Though the bees... You see, here we go, this is a bit I don't understand. Though the bees might scorn the primroses for much the same reason as the fox contemned, not a word I'm familiar with, contemned the grapes in the fable, there was one creature specially told off by nature to do the necessary work of fertilization. Now and again, in the general low murmur of voices about me, I could distinguish an alien note. This came from a large fly in a light brown fluffy jacket with transparent wings, fantastically scalloped in black. He jerked himself to and fro in the air from one primrose to another, hovering a moment over each before settling and thrusting a tongue of amazing length down the yellow throttle of the flower. His name I have never heard, but I know that until recent times he continued to conceal not only his means of livelihood, but his very existence from the vigilance of naturalists. Darwin himself failed to identify this primrose sprite with his special mission in fertilizing work. It is strange how familiarity with the commonest natural objects may exist side by side with pitiful ignorance about them. I had gathered primroses every spring for half a lifetime through before I realized that I bore not one but 2 kinds of blossom in my hand. The discovery, I remember, came from something like a shock of surprise. Yet there was no blinking the fact. The wonder, indeed, was that all these thousands that I had gathered as boy and a youth and a man, the thing had never occurred to me before. There was no difference in the sulphur-hued faces of the flowers, but while the deep central tube of some were closed with a little whirl of pale buff feathers, in others the tube was open, and there stood just within it a slender stem topped with a small green globe. It seemed at first sight, then, that the sexual principle in the primrose was divided, each plant bearing only male or only female flowers. But investigating further, I found that this was not so. Each flower was truly hermaphrodite. You know the word, I can't pronounce it. Only in one of the male feathery antlers, was uppermost, and in the other the green pistil of the female appeared above. 30 years it took me to discover these simple, obvious facts about a thing that I'd handled every day since childhood. How many decades more, I wondered, must pass before I shall clear up the final mystery about them, a matter now, to me, as dark as ever. How, with the primroses alone, this came to be so, and above all, why? And we come to the end of that section, and I'm afraid, whatever the time is, I cannot go on. That has just been too difficult. And I apologise for that. Tomorrow's video is a good video, and I'm very proud of it, and it will be lovely. Today's reading was abysmal, and I have a mind to delete the file, except for the fact that some people will not get that far in the book. And so I am utterly ashamed of myself. But it will pass, and I will be all right on Monday. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate you staying with me on this, which was a very tricky reading today. And Bonnie says, don't forget, this wasn't written in the standard 2021 language structure. No, I absolutely agree. And one could probably read the whole piece 2 or 3 times just to get every last ounce of nuance. It is, I mean, most of it's about trying to get the nuance of the not the nuance, the meaning of the sentence, and then the nuance in it, and all on the fly, and not trip over the words. The Fox and Grapes is an Aesop fable, is it? It shows you how ignorant I am. I had no idea. And you've been fairly familiar, and would have been fairly familiar to the audience at the time. Oh, yes, I dare say it probably would. No worries, Richard. We all are back on Monday. Yeah, absolutely. Got the weekend off to recover. It is a very... When it works, though, it is beautiful. When it works, it is beautiful. And sometimes I do feel that doing this live is probably a mistake, because it comes over incredibly... You know, if I get annoyed with myself, I just look like some idiot who's struggling, and people in the future watching this, like later on, will be, oh, look at that idiot. But it is quite tormenting getting it wrong. And then other times I think maybe I should read these books, pre-record them, so I can cut out the mistakes, so that it just sounds very nice, like you would get on Radio 4. But then you would lose the interaction and the appointment to watch. So he uses many words to create a high-definition description. He certainly I mean, you know, there was a... And the thing is, I'll tell you what, another thing that's going off in my... As I'm reading it, as indeed I'm sure it happens to you as you listen to it, the different ways that the different words that he uses to describe some very ordinary things is astonishingly brilliant. So when he said here, and I read this, but there's still part of my brain that's in listening to what he's saying, going, oh my God, what a clever way of describing it. So when he talked about this primrose, about this fly going down, and he says, hovering for a moment over each before settling and thrusting a tongue of amazing length down the yellow throttle of the flower. And I thought, who would describe the tubular entrance of the flower as a yellow throttle? I just thought, you know, there's brilliance in his descriptions. Utter brilliance. And then there's me clunking over it with heavy boots and not, you know, I suppose the thing that saddens me is not to be able to bring it over eloquently and without stumbling, so that you can appreciate his amazing powers of wordsmith. Anyway, you could mime your own voice. Yes, thanks. I could pre-record it and then just mime it. Yeah, that's true. Oh dear, we understand. You had a day off. Go forth and make some cake. Yes, never mind. All the enjoyable as ever. Each sunshine. Yes, exactly. Anyway, thank you for watching. I will catch up with you anon. There is a Vobes show tonight, so I'm sure the Vobes show will be grand, because I haven't got to read anything, and I've gone through the, you know, I expect the fire's gone out now though. That's probably just having one of those days. Anyway, take care. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you anon. Ta-ta.